Hi guys, this is True Vine Prophetess Catherine's. So you guys, today I have a prophetic audio to share with you, and the Lord have given me Deuteronomy chapter 12. So today, guys, the title of this prophetic audio is I'm Loving God, God's Way. So here we see in Deuteronomy chapter 12 passage, okay, is talking about the one ultimate way to love God, what it means to love God, how to love God. As believers, what is exactly the definition of loving God? It is a question that we are all to think about or take some time, okay, to really think and not dismiss the importance of book of Deuteronomy, verse 12. We shouldn't allow our feeling or the world to define what it means to love someone, including God. We need to be sure we love God in the way He is dictated. And Deuteronomy is the book that defines what it means to love God. Moses begins by teaching the people that when they enter the land, that they will have to tear out all the places where false God will worship. In verse 4, the message is clear. You do not worship the Lord the way the nations worship their false gods. Notice that God does not say that all religions are more or less equal. Notice that God does not say that you can worship Him in whatever way seems fit to you. God that does not say you can worship Him in the way you want. God does not say that we are all on different paths to the summit of the same mountain. You must worship the Lord the way that He wants and cannot worship Him like others do. So worship is about pleasing the object of worship. Worship is not about pleasing the worshippers. Worship is not about us. Worship is about God. Notice how clear this is made in verse 8, okay? Worship is not going to be how it had been up to this point. Everyone doing whatever is right in his own eyes. How we worship God is not a matter of personal preference. How we worship God is not something that we can agree to disagree over. God will decide the best way for the people to worship Him. You do not decide how to worship God. God will decide how to worship Him. So he tells them that when they enter the land, okay, now we are looking at Moses and his people before they entering the Canaan's land, that the people will, okay, seek the place that the Lord your God will choose out of all your tribes to put His name and make His habitation there. Deuteronomy 12:5. Therefore, God is saying that when they come into the land, that He will choose the place where His name will be, and He will live there. Further, worship was not to be given out of obligation or duty, but out of joy. Once the place is located by the Lord, there the people will eat before the Lord, and you shall rejoice in how God has blessed you. Deuteronomy 12:7. And you shall rejoice before the Lord your God, verse 12, as they make the offering. And look again at verse 18. And you shall rejoice before the Lord your God in all that you undertake. God does not accept obligatory worship. God does not accept hearts that are not joyful to worship and offer praise. Joyful worship will exist because of the rich blessing God will provide for the people. So think about the picture God is giving. You cannot worship God in any way you want, nor can you worship Him like the world does. God Himself will choose a place for His worship, and you will rejoice in the place as you enjoy the rich blessing from Him. Eventually, the Lord would name the location and have a temple built as a permanent place where the people of God would worship Him. So, friends, this is the picture of Jesus. People are to seek the place where God put His name and His name in Jesus. I repeat again, people are to seek the place where God puts His name, and His name is Jesus, God with us, and why we must worship Him and worship Him His way. This state in John 2:21, and His body is the temple. Then we have a look at Deuteronomy 12:8-11 verse. Moses then states some of the blessings of his inheritance. Look at this verse. You shall not do according to all that we are doing here today. Everyone doing whatever is right in his own eyes, for you have not as yet come to the rest and to the inheritance that the Lord your God is giving you. But you go over the Jordan to Jordan and live in the land that the Lord your God is giving you to inherit. And when He gives you rest from all your enemies around, so that you live in safety, then to the place that the Lord your God will choose to make His name dwell there. There you shall bring all that I command you, no burnt offering, and your sacrifices, your tithes, and the contribution that your presents, and all your finest vow offering that you vow to the Lord. Deuteronomy 12:8-11. So this is the first time we get a picture of what the rest will look like when they come into the promised land. First, I would like to us to notice that rest and worship are tied together. Moses says that as yet they have not come to the rest, but God is going to choose the place where His name will dwell, and you will worship the Lord in that place, and the Lord will give you rest. Rest and worship are tied together. Rest and fellowship with God are tied together. Rest and the inheritance are tied together. So second, notice that the rest is described as rest from all your enemy around so that you live in safety. So rest is pictured as dwelling with the Lord in security. But however, please consider that rest did not mean stopping all activities. The people were not to go into the land and do nothing. That was not what was promised. Not working was not the picture of the promised rest either. We should have here an understanding that the rest and the Sabbath never meant that all work stopped. Okay? That was not the picture when God rested on the seventh day of creation. Did that mean that God stopped working? No. For Jesus points out that the Father continued to work. John 5:17. Now look up on that verse. The point is this, that God had completed the creation sequence. Similarly, when Israel was commanded to keep the Sabbath, this did not mean that they stopped all activity. In fact, remember that the priests would have had more work to do on the Sabbath than the other days before there was more sacrifices they were to offer. Okay, now look at number 28, 9-10. So we are not given a full picture of what the rest looked like here in Deuteronomy, but Important peace is given to us as we consider Sabbath rest. Here, to rest did not mean doing nothing. The rest did not even mean that there would not be any work. For the priest worked on the Sabbath, and God continued to work after the creation. The rest picture living securely without an external threat, allowing the freedom to focus on worship and fellowship with God. As we look at this text, we see what God is intending with the rest. God is intending to enjoy fellowship with his people in the land at the place where he dwells. The people would not have to worry about survival, but would rest, meaning they can focus their attention on God only. This is why Sabbath regulations were given immediately after the tabernacle direction in Exodus 31. God intended this, in the Garden of Eden as well. Adam and Eve are offer amazing fellowship and proximity to the Lord. Okay. So, because God will richly bless us, we're simply able to focus on God on the rest day. That is why God was offering Israel. God will give you rest so that you can spend your time focusing on Him because He is going to provide for you. So one of the reasons why the Sabbath is spoken in context of adultery, the people were to worship God on their day of rest, not other gods. Okay, so therefore, the rest of this section in Deuteronomy is about not worshipping idols and false god when they come into the land. The people must not be tempted to follow the practices of the people their disposers. Do not research how they worship their God. Okay, so do not even be tempted. That was the command. Because everything the world does for worship is an abomination to the Lord's eyes. So adultery leads to great wickedness. Deuteronomy 12:31. Then Moses gave a firm warning in chapter 13 here in Deuteronomy, which I will just go past 12 a little bit. People are going to say false things about God, even performing signs and wonder to convince you regarding their false words. Okay, but they are going to tell you to leave the Lord and worship other God. Look at verse 3, 13, verse 3. God is testing you to see if you love the Lord with all your heart or not. God would not remove tests of faith, guys. Rather, God will allow people to say false things and work false signs to test if we love God or not. Loving God means carefully knowing and following what God says, not what others say and do. You will be tested to worship God in other ways.